Right? I'm going to have this incredible diet. I'm going to have this low-carb diet, and then I'll stop. And then when I stop, all of a sudden the diet's wrong, or the gym's bad, or nothing happens at church, and we blame the church, and we blame the gym, and we blame those things, because it's all their fault. But we stopped. So tonight, we're going to talk about striking the ground, and I want you to catch some key principles as we walk through this on some reasons why we stop. Because I hope by the time you leave this time together tonight, you will be equipped to march into the things that God has called for you, and you will be absolutely prepared to take it on and to move forward into your calling. I pray for you tonight that this year is not just going to be a repeat of those things that God has prescribed for you and I, that we're going to accomplish it, we're going to reach it, and we're going to see the mighty hand of God at work in our lives and in all those around us. Fair enough? Good. So let's catch up in verse 18. So 2 Kings chapter 13, verse 18 to 19. He says, strike the ground. The prophet Elisha told the king, he said, strike the ground. So the king picked up his bow or picked up his arrow, and he struck the ground 3 times, and then he stopped. And then the man of God, Elisha, was angry with him. And he said, you should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Why did you at 3? If you kept hitting the ground 5 and 6 times, you would have been victorious over the nations and over the people of Aram, and you would have completely destroyed it, and you would have had the victory. Why did you stop at 3? And that's a question I think that we have to reckon with tonight. Why did you stop? Why did you stop doing the things that God has called for you to do? Why did you stop praying? Why did you stop showing up at church? Why did you stop reaching out to other people? Why did you stop getting involved in missions? Why did you stop? Why did you stop? See, the prophet Elisha, if you look at those words, those were some pretty strong words. The prophet Elijah was angry. He was angry at the king. He was upset at the king. He was mad at the king that the king stopped so short. Why do you think that Elisha was so angry and so mad and so upset that the king would stop so short? Because Elisha understood the possibility of the potential that was inside the king. He understood. He said, boy, I knew you had that victory in your hand, but you gave it away. You ever watch somebody that's got so much potential in their lives and they just give it away? And they're so smart, but yet they sit in class and they just filter it away. And they've got so much potential, and they're on the brink of doing something amazing, and they're ready to make that breakthrough, and they're right there on the edge, and then they stop. And Elisha got mad at this king. He said, how could you stop? You're so close. Right? We sing that song, that old song that you're right on the brink of a miracle. Why do we stop so close? And he was angry that the king had so much potential. His heart was broken because the king missed out on a victory that should have been his. That victory was already in the bag. The victory was already won. And the king gave it away because he stopped too short. And as I look back in my life, I see how many times, that I came right there. And then I gave it away. That I didn't take that final step. I didn't just keep on going and keep on doing the things that I knew that I needed to do. And I reached that point, and for whatever reason, and some of these reasons that we're going to talk about tonight, how could you give away the victory just like that? Here you are, you worked so hard to get here. You're the king, you've reached this place, you had it in your hands, and you stopped. How could you do that? And his anger burned at him so much because he knew that victory was so close. He knew that it was right there. So tonight I want you to realize that the king's victory was in direct proportion to the king's perseverance. The king's victory was in direct proportion to the king's perseverance. That if the king just continued, if he just pushed through, he would have had the victory. It was already there. It was already his. So the king's victory was in direct proportion to the king's perseverance. See, perseverance is that ability to persist in the face of adversity. It's that ability to keep on keeping on. It's that ability to continue working towards that goal despite any of the obstacles and the setbacks that you've had. And every one of us in different areas, we've had different setbacks in our lives. And we've had obstacles. And sometimes it seems like life was just chugging along and we're doing and we're moving and grooving and things are going. And then obstacle comes. And I find myself walking backwards instead of pushing through those setbacks, instead of moving through those obstacles, instead of pushing through the adversity. I find myself in retreat. See, that perseverance is what pushes us through. Is that attitude of I'm just going to keep on keeping on. That I'm just going to keep moving. I'm just going to keep pushing. I might not walk as fast or walk as far, but I'm still walking forward. And as long as I'm making those forward steps, as long as I'm keep going towards the things that God has placed in front of me, I'm doing what he's called for me to do. See, Elisha got so angry with him. He said, how could you give up the victory like that? How could you give back all of those gains that you've made? How could you just throw away all of the efforts and all of the things that you've done to get here? How could you just throw that away? See, because when you look at perseverance, perseverance is a picture of God. And our ability to persevere is a reflection on our relationship with the Lord. See, because when you look through the Bible, who is the person that had the greatest perseverance? Jesus, right? The only one that was able to persevere through adversity, through obstacle, even when we were still sinners. Christ died for us. In every level of obstacle and adversity, Christ pushed through. So there's no greater picture of perseverance. And when we have perseverance as our character trait, it's a reflection of God. Because when you look at the book of Revelation, it says, behold, I stand at the door and I knock. And how long does Jesus knock? Until. Right? Thank the Lord that he knocks until. And he's just going to stand there and he's just going to keep knocking. And if that's not perseverance, what is? Regardless if you tell him yes or you tell him, he's just going to be standing there knocking. And he's not going to give up on you. He's not going to quit on you. And he's going to just continue knocking on your door. And those loved ones and those friends and those children that you think are so far away from God, guess what? He is knocking on their door. And he is knocking on their door. And they can shut their door and he's going to knock on it. And they can run from him and he's going to knock on it. And he is just going to keep knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking. Because that's what he is that perseverance of God. How that's such a character trait. And that's a reflection of God. That when I persevere, I show God that I am reflecting your character, that I'm going to keep on keeping on. See, you look at his perseverance. What could make God love you any less? right? He perseveres in his love for you. It says that nothing could separate you from the love of God. He is going to love you regardless of, or he does love you regardless of what, and there's nothing